about the super.
All right, so I gotta go. Wait, hold on. Let me go back. Okay.
Okay.
So first things first. You have a woman. Okay, we're talking about a woman. Okay. So two things. If she's struggling with her weight, right? She's overweight or just struggling. She's gonna be somewhat insulin resistant, and normally what follows that is high stress. So she's gonna have somewhat of elevated or irregular cortisol levels, right? So the way you want to think of it is cortisol is basically jump starting our circadian rhythm in the morning. So if that's imbalance, it's going to throw off the entire rest of your circadian rhythm. So you think of it like this. I have around 5, 6 a.m., you get a shot of cortisol in like ideal perfect world. And then throughout the day, it's going to drop, and eventually melatonin is being able to be released to then set up us to have a great night's sleep. In this case, when you're unhealthy, that's not going to happen because now cortisol is kind of thrown off. So somebody that's tired and wired typically has high levels of cortisol. That's why they're not able to calm down and go to sleep. It could be real subtle where they're dealing with late night cravings and just their blood sugar levels are not very healthy or stable. And a lot of that has to do with cortisol and insulin levels being imbalanced, right? So cortisol being high at night is going to affect melatonin from being released. So two ways to kind of reset cortisol would be a high protein diet with low carbohydrates and in the morning, and then getting a good amount of sunlight, basically for vitamin D and then serotonin production. But if your gut's unhealthy, you're not going to get a good production of serotonin anyways, because that's where majority of it's produced. So to now go into sleep at night, now if melatonin's not released enough, basically it enters the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is in your hypothalamus, and that basically sets your circadian rhythm up. That sets us up for our biological clock to kind of move and the hormones to kind of move in rhythm like they're supposed to go. If melatonin doesn't enter here, leptin doesn't get to enter in and be released.
If melatonin doesn't go to the...
Because melatonin is the fire starter of everything when it comes to getting great night's sleep and setting these hormones up, right?
Okay.
So now if leptin doesn't get to go in there, leptin basically will stimulate the thyroid. The hypothalamus will send a signal to the thyroid to basically increase. And it's going to send out T3, which is thyroid hormone 3. I don't know what the hell else it's called. It's like some other names. They call it T3 though.
Okay.
It's basically it's a very powerful hormone. So basically this is also where we get our fat loss from. So if you don't produce, so basically now leptin didn't go into the psychochiasmatic nucleus and basically stimulate thyroid to basically be released, okay? So now at the most important times at night, which is basically going to be after this process takes place, your body temperature drops. So now basically T3 basically sends a signal to your cells that it has to speed up to increase heat. So now the mitochondria have to start doing work. So this is where you burn body fat. This is where you get a lot of your fat burning from at night. This is where, but also by that process not happening, now you don't regenerate enough. Now the brain's not being detoxified, like waste products aren't being removed, and basically the body's just not able to regenerate. You're not producing enough growth hormone, all these, like a cascade, a bunch of stuff. So another hormone that's released is called prolactin, okay? Prolactin basically is a setup for growth hormone and DHEA. And basically with women, if they don't produce enough prolactin, and a lot of times this happens, they don't get a surge of progesterone, which they need. If you have so someone that's facing menopause, or they're kind of in that stage where like their periods all over the place, that's kind of a sign. They're not producing enough progesterone. If you have already kind of went through menopause, you normally during your period you have a surge of progesterone. Progesterone kind of keeps estrogen in balance. So those two things, if estrogen is in balance because progesterone is too low or estrogen is just too high, you're going to struggle with your weight, you're going to struggle with your health. So then you'll have chances of neurodegenerative diseases, heart disease, osteoporosis, autoimmune disease. So basically like the
prolactin affects these things.
But you don't get the prolactin surge if melatonin doesn't do its job. because leptin's not doing its job, melatonin's not doing its job. So basically, if you're low on prolactin or you're not producing enough of it, a good way to do that is having sex. Like that's a way of getting a big production of prolactin.
Okay.
But naturally, you produce it because melatonin goes into the cytochiasmatic nucleus. So like that's the gist of why sleep is that important. Because basically, the cytochiasmatic nucleus is kind of it's the circadian. Basically, that's the control of our circadian rhythm. So if that's not happening, if these processes are not happening, you're not recovering at all properly. Growth hormone. So like a child, most children have super amounts of growth hormone. They sleep very well, and that's why they recover very fast. As we get older, so the studies show that we drop growth hormone at like 18, 19 years old. And they say it's because we basically we're passing puberty, so these levels start to drop. I say it's because you go basically at 18 you end up leaving home and you start to not follow a normal nighttime sleep. You stay up and you do whatever you want. Obviously, stress in life kind of starts to happen in time, so other things going on. But that's my belief behind it. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. I guess to explain it very, very simply, like I don't know, like you can't like in exercise, you can't isolate health. Like you can't isolate it to it's this one thing that I'm doing. Like everything works in unison. Like you can't isolate a body part. It's a system. The body acts as a system. So if something in the system is thrown off, so again, like I said before, when you think of training effective training has 4 components to it. Sprinting, loading the bones, so lifting something heavy, range of motion, and getting your heart rate up high. Though you need those 4 components in a complete movement practice to be a healthy, functioning person physically, right? But inside the body, what's good for one organ is technically good for another organ, because if my liver is not functioning properly, my heart's probably not going to function properly because my blood's not going to be. You get what I'm saying? Like these things are not working in cahoots. If I'm eating high amounts of sugar, insulin is going to affect everything. It's not just going to affect one part of my body. So that's why you can't compartmentalize these things. Like they all go together. So now let's go even further than that. So now if I get sick, right, and I don't. Well, I shouldn't say I get sick. I develop something like sometimes some form of arthritis or some form of inflammation. The body's natural response to that is to increase body fat around my organs because it's trying to protect those things. But then it's going to send that inflammation to joints and bones, and that's called arthritis, right? So it's doing that. So basically now I can't do a squat. I can't bend my elbow. I can't bring my hand over my shoulder because the body doesn't care if you can do a squat right now because it's trying to protect these organs because these need to function so I can be alive. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is, one thing always affects another thing. You can't compartmentalize it. So that's why I think people have the wrong perspective. Let me just go get this drug. Let me just go do this thing. You have to kind of think of it as a whole. So one person can come and say, I'm overweight because of this thing, when in all actuality it could just be because they're not sleeping enough. So I give you an example of when I sat down with that lady, and she's almost 300 pounds. And we're talking, and she's talking to me about how she needs to get on an exercise program because she needs to lose weight. But then I find out that a good chunk of her life, she was sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. But when I bring up sleep, she looks at me like she has, like I have 2 faces. Because there's no connection. That is my goal. That is my goal. I want to connect how health and fitness go together. Like they're not. I think they're always separated, and that's the most frustrating thing. So even from a psychological standpoint, it's the same thing. Like you can think yourself into certain things. You can think yourself into being unhealthy. Everything works together. Like your cells, everything. Those things work together. They're not separate, and I think that's the biggest issue we have in our country. Like our country and our world. So the most shallowest thing to focus on is calories. I'm not getting enough calories. Let me get enough calories.
Yeah.
Calories. It's
Because
so much bigger than that.
not a while ago, but sometimes I often hear that if I want to lose weight, I have to eat more meals.
Yes, to an extent. But I guess what I'm saying is like you always want to take a cerebral approach to these things. You want to go very deep into it. Like I can't just say food is the problem. Obviously, there's something wrong with the diet here because we have to eat. Then normally that comes with it. That's a problem. 9 times out of 10 though, it's because you're not sleeping well. And like I said to you in the car earlier, the basically 4 basic things that we need to do. We need to move, we need to sleep, we need to eat, and we need to breathe, right? If I stop breathing for a while, what do? I pass out, right? But if somebody drowns me, I die. So it's an immediate effect if I don't breathe. So we know we need to do that, right? So if there's a problem with our breathing, we're gonna feel it automatically. We need to eat because if I don't eat for a short amount of time, I'm gonna really feel the effects and I will potentially die. I need to drink some type of fluid because if I don't have enough fluid, I will die, right? You get immediate effect from that. So basically, we don't pay attention to those signals that we have, or like movement, for instance. We don't pay attention to these signals until something actually wrong, right? Because outside of like, I guess training is the most tangible thing that we can put our hands on and measure, because we're so out of tune with feeling those things out. So like a bum knee or something like that, or like being gassy and not having energy, instead of looking at that as a sign, or increased body fat as a sign that something needs to be changed, we look at those things and basically if it's not bothering me right now at the moment, I don't do anything about it. I ignore it because you can live with it. It's no quick effect. But if I stop breathing, I get an effect. If I don't drink enough water, I get an effect. Like I would die. You get what I'm saying? So that's what. So basically, like it's the old adage. Like we are controlled by instant gratification. Like if it ain't affecting me right now, I'm not about to fix it.
So what you're saying is that we should in fact relate those things like to what you were saying. Like if I need air, I'm instantly going to go into the mode where I'm like, I need to change this.
Yeah. Because the body sends a signal right then and there. Like if I stop breathing, I need to breathe. Yeah. If I need, like my body sends signals to these things, so I'm going to ignore. So if my body's like, we're not in tune to like subtle things. We need like, it has to be like urgent. That's why like if somebody says you have cancer, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking to do something about it. Or if you don't start exercising, that you're going to do something about it because your health's on the line.
What do you call that though when we do that?
What do you mean?
Like, you know how, like, okay, so you know how when we're brought up as kids and they tell you to eat all of your food and you sitting there with your stomach hurt and you keep eating?
Yeah.
Like, when we get that...
But that's where we learn these things from. Okay. That's what I'm saying. We're programmed to think that way. That's how we're programmed. So we're not programmed to listen to signals to our body. We're programmed to follow rules. Okay. Our bodies don't function off of rules. They all I guess I keep reiterating that. We function off of principles. The body's gonna let you know if you're not giving it what it needs. It's gonna tell you. My knee bothering me would tell me that something going on here is wrong. Now it could be something orthopedic, how I'm moving, or it could be something internally that my body's not getting. And again, like that would be a function of figuring out what you do in your day. That's why I said like everything's individualized. You can't compartmentalize and say training fixes everything. Now I think movement is big in this world because I don't think we do enough of it. 10,000 steps is the bare minimum so you don't get rickets. Like, that's bare minimum.
Rickets?
Yeah. 10,000 steps is basically to protect your bones. Like, load them enough so you don't get rickets. We don't do that, though. We don't do that. We don't do enough of that. So it's like, I don't know. I guess how I'm concluding is just, my goal is that, my ultimate goal or my big vision is that I want to close that gap, but I want to make it fun. Like, you don't have to, like, it's not about how much weight you lift. It's not about eating 10, 20 salads a week. It's not about any of those things. It's being in tune with yourself about what you need. And that's it. Like, and not making it so complicated. Like, I love the details, so that's just me. Like, that's the nerd in me. Like, I'm always gonna look into stuff. Like, that's just me. Like, I get fun out of that. So, but on a real simple tip, it's very simple when you put it all together. You need to be asleep at a certain time. Like, we are organic creatures, and you can try to bend reality and bend the world and try to make the world conducive to us, and we've done it. Look at the stuff that we have. You know what I'm saying?
How do you reset your hormones?
Well, I think it's a gradual process. I don't think that happens overnight. But like I said, one of the things is having something simple, having a protein breakfast in the morning with low carbs, getting sunlight, getting enough water, going to bed, setting up a consistent bedtime around a certain time every night and going to bed, managing stress.
So if somebody was, okay, say for instance, like, not somebody, say I, like, that was my goal, like, that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
How long would you say, like, to have it in my mind, like, if you want to see the effects of this, how long should I be paying attention to what I'm eating for breakfast?
I guess I would equate it to habit change. Okay. So what do they say? 21 days to create, 21 days to create a new habit, 90 days to make a transformation or a change, right? I don't know how true that is or science. I think they just made those numbers up because it sound cute. But I think so science in the body, it takes 3 to 4 weeks to see an actual change. And if you're new to like lifting, neurologically you get the most benefits within the first 4 weeks of training. Like you get like you see an increase very fast. And then slowly but surely that gap starts to be closed. So I would say, like, with anybody that does anything, it should at least be 4 weeks. It should at least be 4 weeks. But I think you can start seeing a difference in 2 weeks. You can start seeing a difference in a week. It depends on where your health is. Somebody that's 300-something pounds is going to see weight drop off them in a couple of days because their body is so overweight. Yeah. So your body wants to release the fat, but its number one job is survival first. Yeah. So if I'm not getting what I need first, I'm shutting everything down. I don't care about how you look. I'm going to survive. So this is I guess the only significance I see in looking at calories from a standpoint is, well, 2 things. If you have to make a certain weight or a certain weight class or something, you want to do that because you have to, like, it needs to be measured. Secondly, it's good to look at to see how much you fluctuate. So again, like 1,200 calories one day, 2,000 another. Most people can't handle a 500 calorie gap, like change. That normally is a big change in your body. So that's too big of a change for some people to be having. So like calorie restriction is normally needed, but like 250 calories. And you'll get that if you're eating real foods. If you go from eating a horrible diet to eating real foods, you're going to restrict calories. Like, it's going to be a slight deficit in calories. You don't have to measure that. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's good to know, but I think it's the wrong approach to have.
It's not that important.
I think it's an unhealthy approach because you're not paying attention to your body. Mm-hmm. So how many people get their calories, but they're running themselves in the ground, they feel terrible. You still suffer from feeling tired, headaches, everything else, migraines. You know what I'm saying? Your knees bothering you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You're always cold. Like, so but you're counting your calories. What do you get out of it? So I think, I don't know, man. I'm going for days about this stuff. Like, it's just, again, I just want to close that gap. That's what's always on my mind. And that's what's fun to me about learning. So I'm always going to be trying to learn some new stuff. Like the sleep book I just got. Sean's book was bomb, but this dude's a doctor, and the stuff, like the first chapter was off the chain. So I'm like, there's stuff that I don't even know about sleep that's probably about to blow my mind. So I don't know. I just think that if we study health from that standpoint on the things, on the actual topics, and the importance of them, and we find the principles within those things, that's health. Because then you find how that works for you. My movement practice might not work for you. Mm-hmm. My movement practice wouldn't work for the 50-year-old Wendell, but I'm preparing myself to be the 50-year-old Wendell by what I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about that. My practice wouldn't work for my dad because he's not where I'm at. Mm-hmm. Or my mom because she's not where I'm at. Like, it depends on the person. or like an athlete. I'm not going to train a basketball player the way I would train a football player because his program is going to be different. That's how you have to think about health. My what I need is going to be different based off my needs and my genetics. Genetics play a role in it, obviously. Some people are more predisposed to certain things than others. That's not a death sentence or a means to end. Like that's what you're going to have. Again, that's health. I guess I've just gotten to that point where that's how I look at it. And I think that's the gap I want to close, and that's what I'm trying to figure out how to bring that to the world and make it make sense on a very basic level. Because I understand it very complexly. I can put all those components in my head and I get it. But I don't know. That's where I am. That's where I am. This is what I spend most of my day thinking about, by the way. Like, all day. That's it. Get some.